Hey guys, thanks for coming by and checking out another broadcast here. Um, it's kind of a crazy day today. I guess with all that's happening, it's been just strange to just see something that I'm so interested in and something that I study be pulled into the national conversation like this. It just sort of takes me aback, I guess you could say. If this is the first time you've checked out the broadcast, so my name's Thomas Baker. I was a police officer for about 9 years, and now I study police use of force at the University of Missouri. I'm a PhD student heading into my 4th year. Hey, Cirque, thanks for coming by. And when this sort of came into this topic with George Floyd, with the George Floyd homicide, sort of hit the national headlines and started becoming a big topic of interest. I saw this conversation taking place and decided it would be a good idea to try to get involved and create a space where people could have constructive conversations about what's happening in the United States right now as it relates to law enforcement. Hey, Shelby. Yes, we got the YouTube chat tonight. Last week, we had a problem with our chat system, but it's all back up and running and seems to be working nicely. So welcome to all the regulars that are popping in. Thank you very much for your support. I really appreciate it. So when we saw this hit the national sort of spotlight, I started getting out here and trying to break down videos, doing podcasts on policing, and trying to have public conversations and engage the public, writing an article, that sort of thing. And since when I started, my buddy Sean Murphy joined me and decided we would do a broadcast on Sunday nights, and I do another one on Wednesday nights. And what I do is I break down police footage and discuss what's happening in policing as people chime in and they ask questions and give comments over the chat. So if you have a question about what's happening in Kenosha or anywhere else in the country tonight, go ahead and hit me up in the comments and I'll try to answer your questions. I'm going to break down some footage and I'm going to start with the stuff that was in Kenosha. I already did a video on the YouTube channel, but I'm just going to break it down with you guys. I've seen these all. And I've got like 6 or 7 different videos I want to go through real quick and have a conversation about this. And we'll probably talk about it again on Sunday with Sean, just because this is so, hey, Sleepy Chechen. It's like the old OG Chechen is in here. He's been here since like I first started. He was one of the first people to provide support. And the reason I kept doing this, because it's a lot extra. I have a great time doing it, but one of the reasons I keep doing it is because I feel like I'm part of like a little community now, like the same folks showing up all the time, and we're sort of starting to continue a conversation that we began a couple months ago now. And it's something that I find a lot of value in. So I appreciate everyone who's here and anyone else who's coming in. I really appreciate your time. So what I'm gonna do is go through some of these videos. The first one, it's only 13 seconds long. I'll play it real quick. And I think everyone's probably seen this already. So I'm going to break it down real quick. And I already did this, but I'm going to do it again. First thing I notice is there's a bunch of officers behind this vehicle. A person here with a white tank top on appears to be walking away, and we see an officer raising his hands. We're going to see a weapon be presented here. So we see an officer come out around a vehicle with a pistol, looks like. Could have been a taser, but we now know it's, yeah, I have no idea, Ernesto. I don't have the time. That's the thing. This is my time away from other things that I'm supposed to be doing. So this is, the officer comes around, he's pointing a gun at this guy. So the first thing I think is, well, why are they pointing a gun at him? There needs to be some legitimate reason for doing it. There needs to be some type of threat that the officer can articulate for why was I pointing a gun at a citizen, because if you just point a gun at somebody, it's aggravated assault unless you have a legal justification for doing it. There are lots of exceptions where police officers perfectly within their legal rights to point guns at people, but you need to still be able to articulate it. And we're going to hear what that was as information becomes available. We're starting to get a trickle of information, but it's sketchy, conflicting. And we're waiting for more. So he comes out around the vehicle here. Officer following. We see another one come out. We see some objects on the ground here, which to me makes me think, something happened there before. There was some type of scuffle or altercation, or some people dropped some stuff. It's just unusual to see, objects just sitting there. Starts going in the vehicle. I mentioned this earlier. He's holding the. Hey, Banana Boy. I don't know how to say it. I'm just going to call you Banana. He reaches out with his left hand, the officer, and grabs his shirt, and in the right hand he's got a gun. This is problematic. If you're reaching out and grabbing the shirt with your left hand and squeezing it, and you have a handgun in the other hand, there's this sympathetic reflex, and what could happen is your finger could pull. Hey, man, all right, your finger could pull the trigger, and you wouldn't even intend to do it. It would be like an accidental discharge, and you could shoot somebody accidentally. Now, the fact that he shoots seven times tells me it's not an accidental discharge. Jerry asked if there were kids in the vehicle. I have read articles saying that was the case, but I don't know yet. I think we need to wait for. I'd like to see like a. I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel confident with anything that's been said. With anything that's been said yet, but I have heard that there were kids in the car. So that sympathetic reflex is one thing I'm worried about. So the best thing to do is if an officer is going to try to take someone into custody with their hands, they should holster their weapon and have another officer provide lethal cover if it's warranted to provide lethal cover. You shouldn't try to do both at the same time because it's dangerous. And it would have been nice if they knew this guy was unarmed, if they'd holstered their weapons earlier and tackled him to the ground. I know they'd already tried a taser, but one of my concerns with what I saw here was if they were already, I looked like they were on the ground earlier, and we'll talk about that. I don't know, Adam. It doesn't. I'm highly suspicious of like this one. This doesn't sit right with me, Adam, at all. The shooting. But what I always do is say, well, it's incumbent now upon the state to show me that there's a justification for this. I need a justification, because in all of these cases there are these very tight, sometimes very strange windows that exist where some type of justification could exist. Now it has to be some sort of very, like it's going to be some extreme answer. We're like, oh wow, that's crazy, but then I need some kind of evidence to support that. And right now we're not getting that. So we just see him shoot him. And the only way, obviously I got a question here, standing in front of the vehicle with 7 shots, one could have easily ricocheted off the dash in their direction. Yeah, I guess that's a concern. I wouldn't worry too much about like so just in terms of just the angle of the shooting. So I think that's a valid question. So just the angle of the shooting, this officer is standing up and shooting sort of in a downward motion towards the person, towards Jacob. So he's shooting down. And the backdrop for these shots would likely be the floorboard and dash engine block area. And in terms of a backdrop, I think I'm okay with the backdrop. I'm not too worried about that. Or they found it in the car later. Yeah, I don't know about the knife. I've read that it was in the car. I've read that he had some weapon. I don't know. See, it's still conflicting information. So there's nothing there that I feel solid about. So Chris says, listen, when you're told to do something and that shit won't happen. So I think he's saying like if he just done what he was told, that wouldn't happen. And maybe that, well, it's yeah, I think that's probably true, but this is America. And in America, not doing what you're told and physically resisting or fighting the police, even, you don't get shot for that. You don't get shot for breaking into cars. You don't get shot for getting in fistfights, even punching a police officer. I mean, unless that officer feels as though their life is at risk and you're like going to bash their head on the pavement, they're on top of you, punching you in the face, and you're losing consciousness, shoot them. You've been fighting with someone for 10 minutes and you're completely exhausted and you can't fight anymore, and this person is still aggressing and they're getting on top of you and starting to punch you in the face and you can't fight anymore. I'm okay with you shooting somebody. But just the simple fact that somebody resists arrest, just the simple fact that maybe you're not winning the fight and they start getting away from you, you don't just get to shoot them. The only reason that a police officer can shoot someone who's fleeing, like this guy is leaving, walking away, trying to get in the vehicle, is if he does one thing, and that's present that the officers can articulate that there was probable cause for them to believe that a reasonable officer would need to agree with this, that this individual was going to that vehicle to engage in some activity that represented an immediate threat to the community. And that threat needed to be that someone was going to suffer a very serious physical injury or somebody was going to die. Now, what might that look like? And these are completely hypotheticals. Is the officer could have thought, if the officer had probable cause, not just a hunch, or it was possible, but this person is going to that vehicle to get a gun. If they knew there was a gun in the car and they're fighting with him to keep him from getting to the vehicle so he can't get that gun, then, you know, you don't have to wait for someone to retrieve a firearm from the vehicle and point it at you. If you have, but it can't be when he's going to the car, there might have been a gun in there, because there might be a gun in any car. You need to be able to articulate that there was probable that was what was going to happen, that he said, I'm going to shoot your ass, and you knew there was a gun in the car, and he fought his way away from you and started marching to the car and leaned into the car. I think that could be justified. If you thought there was someone in the vehicle that was vulnerable, and there was some indication he was going to harm, seriously injure, or kill the person in that vehicle, and the only way you could stop him from getting in that vehicle and leaving is by shooting him, then that may be a justifiable reason legally for doing it. But simply non-complying or fighting with officers and refusing to do what you're told does not justify shooting someone in the back. But that doesn't mean that there aren't instances where shooting someone in the back is justified, if that makes sense. Let's see if we got some questions here. Let's see here. All right, that's all right. If you take let's see here. If you take a big chance if someone's combative and determine if armed or not, that's true. So if someone's combative, you have to take a chance. That's your job. You're a police officer. So like when I was a police officer, I had guys who wanted to fight with me all the time. Like it wasn't a regular, like fight with me, like resist my attempts to take them into custody. Maybe that would include punching me so they can get away. I've had people bit me, people spit on me, people tried to kick me, people tried to run me over with cars, tried to do all kinds of things. And I didn't shoot them unless they were going to cause me or someone else serious physical injury or death, and it was immediate, and I needed to respond, which I did. That did happen. I shot and killed someone at work, but it wasn't because I was getting, I was losing a fight because I hadn't trained. I didn't have developed the skill set that was required to restrain somebody, and it wasn't because they were running away and I was worried they were going to get away, or that they were running away and they might go get a weapon. Like it doesn't cut it for shooting someone in the back. It needs to be it was probable that they were going to be engaging in X, or it's probable they were going to be engaging in Y, and X or Y needs to constitute that level of a threat. Chris says, don't Monday morning quarterback until you wear a shield and do their job. So I did their job for about 9 years. And like I just said, I was in tons of fights. I got scars. I've lost friends on the job. I've been in shootings, plural, at the job where I shot once, and I've been present for others where people next to me have shot. So I understand what these events are like and how they feel at a visceral level. And then I've also studied them at an academic level. So I think I'm pretty well qualified to talk about what it might feel like to be an officer and to adopt that reasonable officer perspective. More qualified than a lot of people, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in your world doesn't always happen that way. I'm a citizen, it's my right. After watching it looks to me like the first shot comes from a sympathetic reflex you warned about as possible. That I don't know. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought, Shelby. That could be that the first one was a sympathetic, and then I don't know how that would play out psychologically, and I don't know, but that's an interesting way to think about it. Let's see here. Does it matter or change things if he has a warrant? No. So I don't think it does. Now, if it could be that, no, like if there was some probable cause had been established to arrest him for a homicide, and you thought that he was leaving and he was like engaged in these serial homicides, or you felt as though it was going to he was going to rather go be killed than be taken into custody, and he's presents this immediate threat to the community. Maybe, but that seems like that would have to be like a really sort of complicated and convoluted explanation. But generally speaking, like if he has a warrant for parole violation or for a burglary or a robbery or something, he has a warrant, just a strip warrant for it. I don't see how you could articulate that would be a reason, but it could be a contributing factor in a bunch of other type of circumstances. Like, he had said he's not going to go back to prison alive, and he was going to shoot you, and you knew there was he was armed, or the wife said, hey, he's got a gun in the car, and then he's like, that kind of a thing. Retrieving a firearm, that's a possibility. I need evidence of that. I need some type of like really good explanation for why they thought he was retrieving him, because I thought he might have a gun in the car, so like I said, is not going to be good enough. It needs to be, it was probable that he was going to go do something. Like I had good reason to believe that he was going to go get that. Shouldn't one of the officers been in front of him during discussion, stopping egress? Yeah, that's one idea, Flo. And we'll talk about, let me cue up the next video. That's a good segue. And I apologize if I miss some, yes, basically be damn sure before lethal. Yeah, you need to be damn sure before you use lethal force. Let's see. Thank you, Shelby. The person had a warrant out if you hadn't come across it. Yeah, like I said, it would, I don't think that in and of itself really matters that much. And to be honest, in a lot of places, like the area I worked, having a warrant wasn't unusual. It was just sort of like there was just tons of people who had warrants. It wasn't uncommon at all. So let's look at this other perspective here. Let me see if there's like an altercation taking place, and it looks like it's the person who shot and the officers. And we see Jacob is on the ground here, on his knees and trying to stand up. It looks like you can't tell if he could be hitting the officers, punching the officers. I have no idea. I can't tell from this video. And then we see him walk out around the vehicle, and then the shooting takes place right over there. We already saw that. Now, one thing I would say is that if you already have him on the ground and there are two officers, that if those officers were well trained and had experience and skills and ground control techniques, then they should be able to keep him on the ground. My guess is, and I don't know yet, we'll have to see, is that neither one of these guys are going to be, none of the officers that were involved in that grappling match on the ground are going to have taken a lot of time to prepare for this and trained on a regular basis, because if they had, I really would be surprised if that guy was able to get up off the ground. There's two people trying to hold you down on the ground. Yeah, BJJ skills. I think that's perfect, man. Boy, Zach, I heard that as well. Something about a knife being there, but we don't have enough information yet to know, where it was, and just having a knife in your vehicle, or having a knife on your person, like in your pocket or whatever, is not enough to shoot somebody. It needs to be probable that they're going to use that knife to cause serious physical injury or death to somebody. BJJ skills, I think that's a great comment. If I feel as close to confident as I can be that if two police officers, and they both had blue belts in jiu-jitsu and trained once a week for a year or so, and so they get a blue belt and then trained once a week. So during the academy, they had to finish up and have their blue belt before they hit the street in jiu-jitsu. And both of those officers were blue belts and just trained once a week to sharpen their skills. That guy wouldn't have been able to get up. It just wouldn't have happened. He would have been in handcuffs, and he would have been arrested for whatever charge they had, and that would have been the end of it. And that's how confident I feel in those skills. I also feel like if those two officers had both wrestled at junior college, and then at a junior college, and before they became officers, and then trained CrossFit twice a week, that this guy wouldn't have been able to get up off the ground, because they would have had the basic skills required to control him, and they would have had the endurance and the physical strength to do it. And I would also say that a female officer or a small male officer, someone who's 120 pounds, if they had a blue belt and trained once a week, and they were two of them, that this guy wouldn't be on getting up off the ground once they were on the ground together. That's how confident I feel in those skills. Wouldn't want to be stabbed while working. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be stabbed either. So but like I said, if you can articulate like that, this guy was probably going to get a knife and probably going to stab me. Like if this guy said, I'm going to stab your ass, and went over to the car, and you knew there was a knife in the car, and he's reaching in the car to grab the knife to stab you, I would say back away. But if there's other people there, it may not be a possibility. You enter that space where there may be a situation where you would shoot him. But again, I need some evidence of that. And unfortunately, the Kenosha Police Department passed, like the city of Kenosha were requiring their officers to wear body cameras, but it wasn't funded. So their officers don't have body cameras. So there won't be body camera footage of this. Camera footage that would provide the officer's perspective, and it would either vindicate the officer, provide some exculpatory evidence that showed, they acted within the confines of the law and they can articulate, and the video evidence supports their version of events, and it could very well show that they didn't do anything wrong. Or there could be evidence on that video that shows that the officers acted inappropriately or, committed an attempted murder. That's a possibility, but we won't know because the government in Kenosha didn't fund their police department's body camera program. And if anyone who's listening to this, find out if your jurisdiction, if your city has body cameras on their officers. And if they don't, then call your local whoever you think has some power, and bitch and complain about it, because it's ridiculous. Would you also just say not be a sissy? To put it politely, they had 3 people. Seems odd unless he had a knife out. Yeah, I would say so. I don't know if I'd use the word sissy because I'll get in trouble. My wife will crack me upside of the head if I say that. But I think that if they weren't sissies, you know what I mean? Like if at a certain point, if someone's unarmed and they're fighting with you, you're a police officer, it's your job to control people, and it may require you to kick somebody's ass. To put it bluntly, if you're out on the street and you're working as a police officer and you're trying to execute your duties and you need to detain somebody and you have legal justification to do it, and it's in the interest of public safety for you to detain that person, and that guy decides to fight you and doesn't want to be taken into custody, there's nobody else that's going to come and put them in custody. Like there's no one going to come solve your problem. It's your responsibility to take that person into custody. So you need to, as a professional police officer, know how to fight. It's just the way it is. Believing that the officer would attempt to grab Jacob with one hand and threatens with a knife. Yeah, I would agree, Shelby. Like, so if he's going for the knife, why are you still trying to grab him? Why didn't you just grab him earlier? But that's where the hindsight 2020 comes in, because people can do stupid things when they're under stress, especially if they're not training a lot and they're not putting themselves in stressful situations and learning to manage that adrenaline dump. So they could do something stupid. It could be that this officer reaches out and he didn't even know that he reached out. Crazy, strange things happen. People make mistakes. So I like things like that. I can, I'm willing. It doesn't need to be perfect. The story, this is why all officers get off on, like, they don't get charged with things, because there's a lot of leeway within the law for police officers, because when you're engaging in violence, people don't always perform the way that they would like to, unless they train and have built that muscle memory. It's very difficult to do. Let's see here. And I apologize if I miss anyone's comments. Thanks for coming by, everybody. It's not federally funded, so the body cameras are not federally funded. I think you can probably get grant money and things like this to help fund your camera programs, but in America, we have like 18,000 different police agencies. All of them operate under different rules. They kind of do whatever it is that they want. So not completely, but there's a lot of there's a lot of variability in American policing. So there's no sort of federal sort of standards for training, for performance, for how they handle things. It's a mess. Hey, thanks, Mark. Thanks for coming by. So death before puncture time clock. Yeah, I agree. Sleepy Chechen with a good point as always. Yeah, putting it bluntly is always good. Yeah, absolutely. It applies to if you take up a position as a warrior, Sleepy Chechen, then you have a, which is, people say, oh, we don't want warrior policing, but there's always, as long as the state maintains a monopoly on the use of violence, and a central job function of a police officer is to use the threat or use of violence to coerce people's behavior. If that's how we're operating, then that is inherently like a warrior position. And that doesn't, just because somebody has a warrior mentality, not every component of the warrior mentality is corrupt or innately bad. One of the things is that comes with that mentality is a high degree of personal accountability for your training and your equipment, and you're carrying out your function as, you know, as a martial when it comes to your martial skills. So whether that be spending time at the firearms range and learning how to shoot and how to be judicious with your use of rounds, training under pressure on your own, so going doing push-ups or wrestling with a friend and then shooting to learn how to perform with an adrenaline dump or when you're tired, staying in good physical shape, exercising, maintaining your equipment. All of those things lead to a more this stream has been censored on Periscope. Okay, interesting. So I apologize if my Periscope people got booted off. Yeah, and it could be that somebody found it offensive because we do show a lot of violence on here. So I apologize if I offended somebody. So let's go to the next one. Now, after this event, there's been, you know, everyone knows there's been like shootings. Okay. Hey, Jake, I see Jay. Can you, what does that mean when you say it's been censored? Do you feel it's possible these officers may have been reluctant to be worried because of bystanders or current racial tensions? So I think that theoretically that's possible, but in my experience, like when officers, like they're already fighting with them on the ground there, like it looks like they're wrestling with them on the ground. And when I say like those martial skills, you don't need to punch somebody. Like I don't think officers should punch people very often. If they're gonna be doing strikes, I would recommend most of the times open hand strikes as a distractionary measure to transition to some type of ground control technique. Because if you're standing there trading blows with somebody, you can get caught with a punch, you can get knocked out, you can be hurt. But if you close distance, if it's possible, armed people or people that are way bigger than you, or if you have striking skills, maybe it's different. But for me, I'm a big proponent of getting into that clinch, and that doesn't look violent. Banana, yeah, thank you. I think it is Ed McGuire. He's a professor at Arizona State University, and I think he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, a talented jiu-jitsu player. And he said it's like a gentle form of violence. So your Mobin, self-defense on you. So do I. I have like a mat room and a heavy bag and stuff in my basement, Mobin. So I watch YouTube boxing videos because I can't go to the gym right now. There's no place for me to do any kind of training or anything where I'm at right now. So did the officers have tasers? Yes, Mark, I think they did. And I think there were taser deployments, but again, I don't see it on the video, but I believe I read that there were taser deployments. That could be correct or incorrect. I'm seeing conflicting information. So this is another video. This is from, this is just something I thought was interesting, and that and it could be just BS. So this guy is claiming that he's been fraternizing with the police, and that the police had told him they were going to push the protesters down towards them so they could quote unquote deal with them. Now my guess is this guy's full of shit. That's my default position for people that I don't know, especially people that are anyway. I doubt that, but if that's the case, it's important that in these environments, when you have civil strife and you have two sides, you have the people who are protesting, and you have these counter protesters that the police do everything they can to remain neutral. And that's difficult, because if you're working that protest right now, I can understand why you would see these counter protesters as supporting you, because they are, like, they're saying that they're supporting the police and they're anti-Antifa, and then you're hearing that these protesters are terrorists, and you're seeing violence, or you've experienced some violence directed towards you. People are calling you a pig, they're calling you all these names. So it's very easy to develop an affinity for the other side. But I would argue that as a professional police officer, that you need to maintain a distance from both sides. You can't be seen doing this, or have stories about you doing this, or accounts of you doing this. It's dangerous and could further undermine public trust. And your role as a police officer is to be a neutral arbiter in this, and try to maintain the peace and allow people to voice their voice, whatever it is they want to voice, and to ensure that people are safe, not to take sides, which is why this video I find kind of troubling.
No laser pointers either. No laser pointers.
So these are counter protesters, and I believe this guy on the left is the guy who shot and killed 2 people and injured another in a shooting. All right, so we have the officers saying, "Do you guys need water?" Now, I would say that's fantastic at these protests. So I worked protests back in during the Occupy protests when I was a police officer, and when I had a chance, I would grab water and go hand it out to people in the crowd while we were walking from one place to another. When we were driving and we had a vehicle, I would take a bunch in the car and hand them out to people and use it as a conversation starter and as a way to build a bridge between the police officers and the community. So I think this is good, and I think that the officers should do this to both sides whenever possible, counter protesters and protesters. My worry is this next interaction. And again, it's hard to maintain your distance when people are there and they're saying they're supporting you. So this is the guy, the shooter, and he's going to get some water. And that was directed at somebody else, not this guy. So he was called over and said he could have some water.
We got a couple. We got to save a couple, but we'll give you a couple.
So he says, we got a couple. We'll try to, I'll turn up the audio here. Sorry about that. It's a low audio on this actual video, so I apologize for that. So the officer says, we've got a couple waters. We'll give you a couple, but we need to keep a few.
We appreciate you guys, we really do.
And that's what I have an issue with. So he throws out the waters. I think that's great. But he says, we appreciate you guys. We really do. And that's on video. And that's being shot. I pulled these off Twitter because they were trending on Twitter. And people are saying, they're collaborating. The police are collaborating with the counter protesters and they're supporting them. And when you have video of you saying, we really appreciate you guys, we really do, that crosses the line from here's some water, and now if they're engaging and they're saying, no, I'm glad to see you guys voice your opinions, saying what you want to say, I'm glad everyone does that, and you remain neutral while encouraging civil discourse, that's one thing. But and this is maybe a little nitpicky, but you're not, it's not just you that's out there. You're representing all police in America right now. These videos are spread nationally, and optics matter. How things are perceived really matter. I was at a few protests back in July where counter protesters drove up to our lines in pickups, and they removed license plates and brandishing semi-automatic weapons at us and the police. Yeah, I've heard similar accounts. So here's what I worry about. I worry about either side bringing guns to this. When you get civil conflict between two groups, two semi-organized and organized groups, and then you inject weapons into this, it's not gonna end well. It's just gonna make things worse. Refuse to follow up on those complaints. rumors are out that militias requested to be deputized, which is odd. I think I saw a sheriff who said, yeah, that he'd gotten asked and he said, hell no, or I shouldn't even comment because I don't remember what it was, but I've heard that as well. What I really want to make sure doesn't happen, which I think would be tragic for the country, is if our law enforcement apparatus, so like our police and our federal law enforcement agencies, become super politicized and completely affiliated with one side of the civil divide. I don't know what that will mean, but I think it would be tragic. Let's see, the cops are human too, considering how much the mob has demoralized them. I think, Doom, that because I've worked protests as a police officer, and I think I said earlier, like, for sure that if you're working in this environment and you see counter protesters that are supporting you, and then the other side is calling you a fucking pig and saying they wish you die, and throwing things at you and launching fireworks at you and burning down public buildings, and you've been working 12 hours and you want to go home, it's perfectly natural to dislike the protesters. But what we need is professional police officers to maintain their discipline and to maintain their professionalism and to toe the line and do their jobs. And it's not easy, and we're going to be expecting a lot, but there's no other choice, because if the police are if they side with one side on this, if they lose their professionalism, then it could fundamentally undermine the legitimacy of policing in America even further. If you can't alienate half the population and survive as the security force for the country. If they're on the side of law and order, that would be normal for them to be on a side. Well, that's a big assumption, and that's your political opinion that one side represents law and order and one side represents anarchy or whatever. But in America, you can voice your opinions. They don't have to be popular. We dealt with the counter protesters by bringing rocks and bricks to throw at their pickups. When they did that, they just left and stopped because they were not really interested in shooting us. Yeah, that's the thing, Shelby, is what I worry about, is having somebody who does shoot, and then, like last night, and then somebody comes and they so somebody shoots last night, and then the protesters come back armed, and then we have gunfights. This isn't normal politics. It's burning and looting versus business owners. So yeah, there's been some burning and looting, and those are people that, if they develop probable cause, then you charge them for sure. The vast majority of the people are not doing that. It's like everything, like with policing, the vast majority of like overwhelming majority of incidents involving police they're inconsequential. They're just people have conversations with the cop, they file their report, they get their ticket, they go about their business. Well, being an anarchist, there's nothing wrong with being an anarchist, Doom. If you want to be an anarchist, you have every right to be. An anarchist is somebody who believes in a certain political philosophy. And because anarchism, being an anarchist is a certain political philosophy. Having that political philosophy in and of itself, there's nothing wrong. There's lots of people that are anarchists who live perfectly peaceful lives and don't ever bother anybody because they believe in a certain political ideology. Burning things down or assaulting someone, that's different. So protesting is one thing. These rioters are domestic terrorists. I hate that term. I think it's a terrible term, because what do we do with terrorists in America? We drone them, or we send them to Guantanamo Bay, or we send in Navy SEALs to kill them. And people who are engaging, so if someone goes out and they commit, if they go smashing in businesses and destroying businesses, they're committing property crimes. So they may be felonies depending on the level of damage that's done, but they're committing property crimes. And when you label them terrorists, it puts them in a category where they're no longer. It's like and the way we think about terrorists, it's like they're no longer should be afforded due process, that their rights no longer matter, that they shouldn't be valued, that it's okay to shoot them. It sends a message. It sends a message to 17-year-old young men who have guns and are impressionable and don't think things through. I know when I was 17, I did all kinds of stupid shit. I went and joined the Army when I was 18, so that's how stupid I was. Now I'm glad I did it, but when you use those types of words and when we label a significant portion of our population terrorists, then we're heading down a very, very dark road. And that has happened in other societies where labels have been put on big chunks of people. You don't call big chunks of people deplorables. You don't call big bunch of people terrorists. We're all American citizens. We're all even if you're not an American citizen, if you live here, you're part of this community, you're afforded constitutional protections, and we're not going to use excessive force against you. You have the right to due process. So if you go smash a bunch of windows and destroy a bunch of businesses, then the police come arrest you, serve a search warrant, do whatever. You go to court. That's how we handle it in America. I used to be one of them. I used to be an anarchist. I mean. Yeah, and I was always peaceful. Yeah, I mean, you can be an anarchist. I mean, like, there's all kinds of books. A lot of anarchists who were deeply involved in the labor rights movement in the United States. Lots of communists who were involved in those movements and played important roles. Lots of socialists who played important roles. There's all kinds of an American political thought throughout our history. We have a wide variety of ways of thinking about the world that have had an influence, and that's one of the strengths of our society, is that we're an inclusive society where we allow people to voice their beliefs, to say what they believe, to act on their convictions, and that they be protected while they do that, that they won't be that they'll have due process, that there won't be unreasonable levels of force used against them. Those things, we need to value those things, reinforce them, encourage them, develop policing agencies that protect those rights. And that's the only way that people are going to trust police, is if they view them as protectors and custodians of our democracy and not an occupying force. I've always been a peaceful pro up until people showed up and pointing guns at me. Yeah, that's what I worry about, is guns. Guns are dangerous, and these conflicts could end very, very badly. But the reality is that 90% go unpunished, so we're down a dark road. Yeah, that's an enforcement issue. Police need to get the camera footage, identify the people that are doing it, arrest them, present them before a magistrate with a solid case, and secure conviction. Do good police work, and then have courts and corrective mechanisms that help reform people and reintegrate them into society. I would say we need to address it way before this and ask ourselves, why are so many people out in the street? Because if you feel as though you have a vested interest in the future of the country, and you feel like you have a bright future and there's lots of opportunity, and you're going to own a home, you're going to get married, you're going to, get to go on vacation, you're going to have good health care and a stable lifestyle and a bright future, you're going to have kids and grandkids, you're probably not out looting. You're probably getting to bed because you want to get up in the morning and get a promotion. So I would say, well, what can we do to create a society where people want to get up in the morning and be a part of what we're doing and not feel like they're living outside of it? I don't know the answer to that, but okay, and self-defense is okay. I would agree. All right, I'm going to run into problems if I don't answer questions. I apologize. Destroy people's lives. It's a coordinated group of people. I'm viewing them as terrorists. Yeah, it's your right to view them that way, and that's cool. All I'm saying is that I think it's dangerous, and I don't think it's productive. I think that what we need to do is afford everyone within our society rights, and by labeling terrorists, I just worry about that. I have a question about Jacob case. Really understand that BL really isn't. Thank you for your service, but do you really understand that the BL movement really isn't? I don't understand the question. It really isn't about what? Can agree to yours. Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. And that's what I like about this is like, that's why Sean and I on Sunday nights, we disagree on all kinds of stuff, but we're brothers at the end of it. Like, I'm still going to love the big ugly Irishman no matter what. So we can disagree, we can have arguments. When we get off of our streams, we'll usually argue for 10-15 minutes, and it'll get heated sometimes, and you get frustrated with each other, but that's okay. And that's what I want people to, that's what we all need to do within society at large, is when you look at people on the other side of this, you need to like think about your own family, and think about, you probably have a relative who thinks about all of these things in a completely different way than you do. And just try to think about people who you aren't related to like you would your family members, if that makes any kind of sense. Because division right now is really, really, really dangerous. Really dangerous. That's what grown-ups do. Yeah, I agree, Michelle. Let's all try to be grown-ups. So I had another one. People were on here. I actually kind of wanted to get your guys' opinion on this, and you're not going to be able to see it very well. It's like a really crappy small video, but this guy walks down. This is the guy who did the shooting, and I saw a bunch of conspiracy theories online. People were saying like that this guy he puts his hand up like this. Let me show it again. This is the guy who did the shooting. So he puts his hand up like this, and then he turns it around like this. So he comes up and he goes like this. And I saw pictures of this kid. It looks like he was like really into policing, and then maybe did some kind of internship with a police department and wanted a future as a police officer. And people were online saying that this looked like some kind of coordinated activity, that this guy was collaborating with the police and did these shootings, and then was coming back to them saying I'd done it or whatever. And this is for me, when I see this, I see that means code 4, which means I'm okay, and like radio speak for a lot of police officers. And he's walking down the street, and the police are saying, don't walk, stop what you're doing. And I think he's saying, I'm code 4, I'm good, don't worry. Like it's like a peace offering. It'd be like kind of like almost like showing your hands, kind of like everything's okay. So I don't think that this was some type of like nefarious sort of thing going on. I think this was just a kid who's like super into cops and maybe thinks he's a cop. And that's one of the problems here, is that people are really impressionable. Some people, they don't necessarily think clearly. They may not be the most rational people. So that's why we need to like make sure that our leaders, people in positions of power on both sides of the aisle, because I see the president saying all kinds of crazy shit, and then I see Democrats saying all kinds of crazy shit as well, like saying like just right off the bat saying this needs to happen without all of the facts. And what we need right now is we need leaders who are not trying to capitalize on this. People should not be capitalizing on this. We should be trying to like lower the temperature, because there are this is not the appropriate term, but there's nutballs out there. There's people who will do things if they're inspired to do something, and all it takes is a few nutballs to trigger the other side and bring out their nutballs. And then once the nutballs get at it, then regular folks can get overwhelmed and sucked into it, and we could head in and spiral into something that gets to a point where we can no longer control it. Like this, I think, is controllable still. But if we look at history and we look at other civilizations, other societies across human history, when you have civil strife and things can spin out of control very quickly, and there's no reason to think that can't happen here. Let's see, we got some more questions. All right, let's see here. All right, I apologize, I'm gonna miss some of these questions. It's starting to heat up a little bit in the chat here. Law doesn't matter, just cause. Absolutely. Something I wrote, MK Ultra, absolutely banana. And that's one of the things, is that the American government and policing have done things in the past that it's just soiled the reputation to the point where building trust is very difficult. Is shouting still not allowed? No, shouting is shouting at each other. Let's see here. POS. Am I a POS? I could be. I am sometimes. The kid looks like the kinds of people that counter protest with their pickups and rifles. Yeah, it looks like. Yeah, I mean that's the there's a certain element, a certain trope within our society that I'm talking about specifically. It's these young, impressionable men who get caught up in a cause and do all kinds of crazy things. All kinds of crazy. Hey Mark, if you missed it, I did a. You can play back and watch the breakdown we did at the beginning, and I put up another video on YouTube that has a breakdown as well. So I'm sorry you missed it here. He was giving up, trying to tell them what happened looked like. Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Cirque. Cut loose people that cops are arresting. Yep, that does happen quite a bit, Tuna. Sometimes it's a good thing, just as incarcerating people may not be the best choice, and then other times it's a bad choice. Like I've talked about this last week with Sean, where I had a guy who I booked in and the judge just let him go and shouldn't have, and the Mexican mafia thought that he had snitched him out and murdered him because of it, and that was just because the judge was like just kick somebody loose when they shouldn't have. So that does happen as well. Black rifles matter. My black rifle matters. I clean it all the time. Man, I don't know controllable means in your world, but the fire's damages looks out of control. I agree, it does. I think, Banana, it is getting out of control, but I think that we're still in a position where we can work together and diffuse this and de-escalate this. This is the popular term right now, and I think that's what we need. Yeah, I heard first shooter was the guy, arm shopper. Who knows? Sorry, we're still talking about it, Mark. We're going through the the law's not being enforced equally. It never is. Missed the breakdown, but it looks like he was acting in self-defense. I'm gonna need if you're talking about the shooting. If you're talking about this one right here, I don't know. We don't see it. It's not very clear, but let's see here. Chechnya or anyone else, the jaded militants recruit the young zealots to do their dirty work. And the sleepy Chechen, that's a great comment. He just said, just like the IRA, like the Irish Republican Army, just like the separatists in Chechnya or anywhere else, and sleepy Chechen grew up during a civil war. So I think he and experienced civil war, and I hope it's okay, you've mentioned it on the air before, was shot civil war. Now he's a woodland firefighter, and is a great American. Which what makes America great is the people who come here, because they're they want to live the American dream. Like, that's a real thing, and he knows what this looks like, and he said several times since this started happening that he sees these similarities from back home in Chechnya about this young impressionable men, like this young man here who shot these people, who get sucked into a movement. Now, if you're 17 years old and you're out in this city in the Middle East protest with an AR-15 slung around your neck, that's not good. That's not going to end well. We don't want 17-year-olds out in the street with guns. Nothing good is going to happen. And I'm going to scroll down here. Did you see an angle of him chasing behind the car before he shoots? That's what I mean. Are you talking about the shooting that sparked all this, or are you talking about this spark right here? You're talking chased him behind the car before he shoots. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean, man. Sorry about that. Look like self-defense to me. Okay, let's see here.
Hey boys.
So we see this guy, see a person here.
That's antique,
this guy chasing him, throwing him. So this is the guy who does the shooting, and these people are chasing him.
Oh, he got a gun, baby.
And now he shot somebody.
Oh, he shot him. Get back.
And this is the shooter here.
Shot him, man. Shot him.
And then he goes back over to this is the person he shot. I think this is the guy who was shot in the head.
He laid him out.
If this guy takes off his shirt.
He laid him out.
This guy takes off his shirt to try to stop the bleeding. And then he runs away. Watch it again. There he is. He's running with the gun. This person throws something at him, and this is the person who gets shot. And there's another video of this guy. So he throws something at him.
Oh, he got a gun, baby.
And it says he's got a gun, baby. And then he just starts chasing him again. He shoots him. So he is being chased by somebody. But being chased by somebody is not enough to shoot them with an AR-15. And I'm going to say this, but because you don't, the problem here, as far as I can tell, is that we have armed 17-year-old with an AR-15 in the middle of the street in a confrontation with these people. If no one had guns, we don't want armed men in the streets fighting each other, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't think that that's too much of a stretch. And I would hope that regardless of your political opinions, that we can all agree that we do not want our young men in the streets in gunfights. I don't know if it was a Molotov cocktail or not. Do you have a reason to think that? Did some? I didn't see anything blow up. I know that there have been Molotov cocktails, but I didn't see one. They just act. Kids, yeah, young men don't. They don't think. They just act. We're acceptable targets. Yeah, I hear that as well. I spend a lot of time in these chat rooms, and they're horrible places. These pro-protester chat rooms and pro-police chat rooms. And there's trolls from either side going into their rooms and stirring up shit. And the people on both sides say the most vitriolic, horrible things. And I'll inject myself into these spaces because I'm trying to I try to say, hey, I can sort of be in the middle here. I can understand and represent the more liberal side of things, and I have some legitimacy, and I can identify with the conservatives because I've been a police officer, and try to manage that space and create like civil discourse and tone things down a little bit. It doesn't do much, but I would hope that it helps just a tiny little bit. And I've been called an Antifa communist terrorist MFer and a dirty bootlicking pig, all like within one comment of each other. And I'll see people saying like if anyone resists arrest or anyone doesn't do what the police tell, they should just fucking shoot them. And I see people saying people should just execute cops because cops are dirty, disgusting pigs and they're inhuman and they deserve to die. And if you think that way, if you think that way or encourage others to think that way, then that's a very destructive way to engage with the world, and it's harmful, and it's a very un-American attitude to hold, that a big sizable chunk of your population are not worthy of the protections of the Constitution. If you really believe that this is your country and you're going to support it and defend it, and you think that Constitution thing, though it's flawed and we have our problems, that it's worth rescuing, worth saving, then you shouldn't be saying those types of things. You shouldn't be disparaging huge segments of the population. And then that goes for myself, because I get caught up in it as well and say things I shouldn't say and get frustrated. But we all need to think about our kids, because they're the ones who are going to have to deal with this if we screw it up any worse than we already have. All right, let's see here. And I apologize, I'm going to miss a bunch of the brain isn't formed at 17. No. And I know all I thought about at 17 was like figuring out a way to party with my friends and maybe get laid. That was like all I thought about. Play sports and have fun. I didn't think things through. I wasn't rational. I didn't think about the implications on my future. A tinderbox of armed citizens, misleading video clips from phones. Yeah, I think that these videos they're causing a ton of problems, because people are seeing things out of context. They're being exposed. Like, think about this. 20 years ago, if you sat down and watched this live stream right here that I usually produce, like this week, I'm not really showing that many, but I'll sit here for 2 or 3 hours, me and Sean, and we'll watch videos of people being killed. And 20 years ago, they would have been like, what is wrong with you? Why are you're showing snuff films to people in public? Like, that's sick. Like, it would have been viewed as a very strange activity. But the internet and these strange little devices that we all carry in our pockets have turned us into people that have been desensitized to a certain level of violence and have just become a part of our day to watch these. So I feel obligated to try to add some context to it. But if you think about it, it's very strange that we're living in a world where we see these. And I think that Mark is right. It really inflames our society. I think it explains a lot why people feel so frustrated and so angry about what's happening. To protect that body shop, and the protesters started setting it on fire. So the Watcher says that the shooting, he was there and he may have shot some people, and some of this might have been related to someone setting fire to a shop or something like that. If someone wants to go set some stuff on fire, we can't have citizens out there shooting them. That's going to end badly. I don't think that's exactly what you're saying. But I don't think, so here's the deal. I don't think that some 17-year-old should be out there with a gun protecting anything. I think that's just a recipe for complete and utter disaster. I know I have a 16-year-old son, just turned 16, and the idea that he would go, if I sent him into some city with an AR-15, to think that he's not going to get freaked out or scared and shoot some people, or just be an idiot and shoot somebody, like I wouldn't take that risk. Like, if I'm going to expose my 16-year-old to a firearm, I'm going to take him to the range, and it's going to be a slow process. It's not going to be sending someone out on the street to defend somebody's business. That's crazy. Over 13 million unemployed. Yes, Shelby. So inject into all of this a pandemic, and inject into this the greatest financial disaster since, or possibly even greater than, the Great Depression, something that we haven't fully felt yet. We're about to feel a bubble of evictions. I already have had a former colleague that I worked with. He was a commander for the old department I worked with, who got killed at an eviction sort of thing that was related to COVID. And we're going to see a ton of evictions. We're going to see violence. We're going to see desperation. And our government is incapable right now, it appears, of taking the steps that are necessary to secure, to provide for the people during this crisis. He was antagonizing that guy on that. Yeah, I saw that video where the guy who got shot was being super antagonistic and talking a lot of shit. And that's why you shouldn't have 17-year-olds out there with guns. And that's why we don't want guns out there, because there's people out there that are looking for fights. There are young men, just a handful of them is all it takes. And like my Chechen friend said, in Chechnya, there were these there's just a handful of people, and they recruit and they propagandize and they get young folks to do their dirty business. It's easy to convince a 17-year-old to do something. Someone threw a Molotov or a rock at a cop. Would the shooting have been justified? It would depend, Doom. So it would depend on the circumstances. So if someone had we had these things called river rocks in Arizona. They're these giant like boulders sort of thing, and they were all over the place. And if someone had picked up a river rock and was charging at me and going to throw that river rock at me, and I couldn't get out of the way, then I would look at that just like I would them trying to hit me with a sledgehammer. I'm not going to get hit with a sledgehammer. That's a deadly force encounter. So yeah, that could be it. If someone was in a position where they came up and, I'm in my car and they're running up and I can't get out of my car, and they're going to throw that Molotov cocktail into the car and I can't get out of I would say so. If someone's out in the street throwing Molotov cocktails, depends where they're throwing it. If they're throwing it at a business, I don't think you can shoot them. I think you arrest them and you call the fire department, because the preservation of life should be put above property. If there are people in the building and you think he's going to set it on fire and kill people, and that's probably what's going to happen, that's the probability that could happen, then you have an obligation to defend the people in that building. So I would say that it really depends. Now it's just life. Yeah, I would say that you can't kill people to preserve property as a police officer. You need to be preserving life and limb. So if someone's going to cause serious physical injury or death, lethal force may be an option. But if outside of that, destroying property, they can have a million Mercedes-Benz lined up and they're going to light those motherfuckers on fire and destroy millions of dollars worth of property. And it doesn't matter. You're not going to just shoot them for it, unless starting the fire is going to hurt somebody. If you throw a Molotov cocktail, yeah, probably a justified shooting. A rock, certainly not. I would say, Shelby, it all depends on the size of the rock, depends on where you're throwing the Molotov cocktail. if you've got a big container of Molotov cocktails and you throw one and you're reaching to grab another one and they're like, well, he's going to keep throwing Molotov cocktails at me and I'm going to get hit with one, then that could very well maybe. Even the New York Times misled to characterize the incident as a crazy cop shooting a choir boy in the back. Well, even the New York Times, I wouldn't necessarily use that terminology when I'm talking about the New York Times, because I've seen the New York Times do some crazy things over the years and some of the things that they've written. Going back to the Iraq War, going back to Russiagate, some of the things that they wrote during the whole Russiagate thing, some crazy things. So they've written some crazy things on all sides. So I don't disagree with your comment that they wrote some stupid stuff here, but that to say even the New York Times as if they're and I know you're not. I'm just making fun of the New York Times, Mark. I'm making fun of you. The New York Times can also do good work. I'm sorry if I've got New York Times fans here or anyone that works there here listening. Let's see here. Militia members. He was with other militia members. Yeah, 50. Yeah. So yeah, I don't want him out there with other militia members. Don't particularly want armed people down there at all. I don't think it helps. It's not the responsibility in our society it's not the primary responsibility of citizens to defend property and defend lives. If it's required, and if you are home and you need to defend your home, that's one thing. But we have a mechanism in place that maintains a monopoly on the use of force, and that's the police department. We also have a National Guard, and it's the responsibility of the police department, and it's the responsibility of the governor to provide security. And having people, so if you have protesters and then you have other people show up, counter protesters show up with guns, I would argue that they're making things worse by showing up with those guns. If I were a police chief, and I think I know enough about policing that I can put myself in the mind of a police chief and make a good decision, have a pretty good idea of what a police chief would think was a good thing to happen in their city. And I can guarantee you that whoever the chief of police is in Kenosha, Wisconsin, does not want armed vigilantes showing up in their street to provide security, because they know that they have no control over those vigilantes. They have no control over those militias. Those people are on their own program and they could do some crazy shit. It's only going to make things worse. It's going to agitate the other side. Then they're going to show up with guns. The best thing people can do if they want to diffuse this situation is stay home and vote for people that you think are going to do a better job, or call your mayor and complain, but don't show up somewhere with a gun. It's not going to end well for anybody. Everyone deserves due process. Vigilantes are un-American. Absolutely. Well, it should be un-American, but we do have a long history of vigilantism, and vigilantism, think about lynching. That's a form of vigilantism. It was something that was really common in the West, not just against black people, but specifically against black people. But in addition to black people, other white people were lynched in the United States. People were, when people feel as though the government is not going to provide them the justice that they want, they'll take it into their own hands. It's something that happens quite often throughout American history, and it's never a good thing. When I was in college, I studied agricultural economics for a semester. One of the things they were approved of the data was this. When you get home at the end of the day and want to eat, that's hard. When you get home at the end of the day and can't feed your kids, it begins to, absolutely. So if economic pressure, Shelby makes a great point, this economic pressure being placed on people drives a lot of this. So a lot of the people that are protesting, like Black Lives Matter protesters, they're there because this is the sort of central rallying cry, but it's a lot more that's at stake in their minds. I believe that it's a whole host of grievances that they have, and and a lot of those are rooted in a lack of economic opportunity, and they don't believe they have a good future ahead of them. And I would argue on the other side that young men who are joining militias and going out to provide security, they feel disenfranchised. They don't feel as though the government is doing what it should to protect them. They don't feel as though they have the opportunities that they have. That the other side may say, well, it's the Chinese or the Mexicans that are causing the problems, and the Black Lives Matter say it's the white police and the people in government. But the root of their discontent is quite often based in the economic position in which they find themselves situated. The opportunities that people have, they're feeling that the government is there to represent and fairly arbitrate their disputes. If those things are not there, then people become disenchanted and they become vigilantes. They take matters into their own hands. Young men use violence. And once that begins, we're all screwed, to put it scientifically, right? What about getting chased and being in fear of getting jumped? Do you think it would depend? So there could be a situation where you're being chased by a group of 10 people and you think they're going to beat you to death and you need to shoot somebody. That could very well be something that does happen, which is what makes this is going to make this a damn difficult case for any prosecutor, because there's sort of like all you need to do is establish reasonable doubt. That's probably not going to be that difficult to do here, because all you need to do is articulate a fear. Now, that's why I say the problem that I see here that I can identify is young men with guns in the street. That's what we want to avoid, because you can get away with a lot in these type of dynamic environments. What if it were a Ferrari? Well, that might be a different story, Banana Boy. I'm not crazy. You can't burn a Ferrari. It's an Italian vehicle, right? I don't know anything about cars. I know. I don't like driving them anymore because I did have to drive too damn much. And he didn't throw it at the property, threw it at a 17-year-old. Yeah, we don't know. Well, you're assuming that was a Molotov cocktail. I don't have any reason to know that was a Molotov cocktail. If they were to show me that this kid knew that was a Molotov cocktail and actually was, and the guy was chasing him and going to burn him with a Molotov cocktail, then that might be important. Is a skateboard to the head deadly force? It depends on the skateboard. If it's a long board, then yes. If it's a short board, like a little trick board, no. It depends. So like if somebody, whacks me with a skateboard, it's probably mean they're just going to get their ass kicked. But if it's a big person and I feel like, oh crap, they're going to beat me to death with that skateboard, they might catch around for it. It really depends on your strength. If I'm a smaller, officer, 120-pound officer, and I have a larger person with a skateboard and they're chasing me and they're trying to beat me with that skateboard, and they've made it clear that they're going to really jack me up, I don't need to get beaten with a skateboard. That's not part of the job description. Now, getting whacked, getting a punch, getting slapped, getting spit on, getting kicked, having things thrown at you, that's part of the job. So it really depends. Shouldn't have been brandishing a firearm at protesters. Yeah, that definitely not. Irresponsible journalism. Lots of that going on right now. How is that a radical position? If someone shows up and pointing a gun and yelling, they shouldn't. I feel threatened. Shouldn't we get self-defense too? Yeah, absolutely. If someone shows up and they're pointing guns at you, yeah, I don't blame you. And to defend yourself, that's great. I would hope that if people are pointing guns, that we could rely on the state to resolve that situation for us. And the best way to avoid this is to not have people showing up with guns in the first place. And that's what I would hope to communicate to both sides, is that for the Black Lives Matter protesters, showing up with guns, I think, is a bad way to go. And to the people who are counter protesters, if you're vehemently opposed to this movement and you want it out of your city, showing up with guns is only going to make the job of your local police department more difficult. And I can rest assured that the well-intentioned, well-meaning, caring police officers who work in your city and want to protect you and want to do a good job do not want you to go down there with a gun and provide security for them. That's a bad idea. Now, there may be some irresponsible police officers who think that's a great idea, but I would argue that that's a terrible, terrible course of action. Most people can't handle. No, I can't. Nobody can handle an unruly crowd, I guess. How do we rein in the gun problem? Casey asks. I don't know, man. You got an idea, because it's like, I think it's intractable. It's a constitutional right now. It's been clearly defined, and I don't see how we reduce the number of guns significantly in American culture. So I think that we're always, compared to other Western societies, going to have really, elevated homicide rates and a lot of shootings. Didn't protect the businesses, though. Yeah, the police may not be protecting the businesses, but I don't think sending 17-year-old kids or adults that don't own that business down there to protect their business is a good idea. We don't live in the age of militias yet. When we enter the age of militias, we're in big trouble. I have 7 guns and hate how easy are they to get. I would argue that the best way to rein in the gun problem is wider and longer lasting background checks. Yeah, I don't think you can rein in a gun problem in America, Shelby, just because there's so many guns out there already. I mean, it's so easy to get guns in the United States. They're just everywhere. If I want to buy a gun and the background check takes 6 months, so yeah, it might slow down the sale of new guns. I would agree. Let me see here. Now, sorry, I'm going to miss a bunch of these messages. You have a really superior attitude and you undermine the justice system. What am I doing to undermine the justice system, Nick? Seriously, like, I think, if I am undermining the justice system by saying what I'm saying, then I would like people to explain what it is that I'm saying, because I don't intend to do that. I think that we need a robust, fair justice system that provides equal access to all of our citizens. A lot less buildings were burning last night because of armed men. That's your hypothesis. I don't think that that's going to be true. I don't think that there's a direct association between sending out armed citizens and diffusing this. I think it's an escalation. Wow, you must be the smartest person in the room. Am I? I don't think so. And we're not in a room. We're in like a big space, and there's so many of you here a lot of the time that I guarantee you that I might be one of the dumbest people in the room. I do a lot of dumb shit, that's for sure. Usually not. Statistically, the police rarely stop violent crime, but increase the availability if I don't stop violent crime. I would agree that the firearms don't reduce violent crime. Thank you, Shelby. I just tried to get this earlier. Does it upset you when the NHL and others send Jacob? I didn't. I don't get the rest of it. I tried to get this in earlier. Does it upset you when the NHL and others send Jacob? I think I missed a word. Are police forces large enough to control hordes of citizens running gun battles in streets with handguns and military rifles? No, they're not, Mark. That's why we can't allow ourselves to get to the point where we have big groups of armed citizens in the street. It's not tenable. American police departments are not designed to manage that type of a level of conflict. And I'm assuming that when we get to that point, and I said when because I feel as though we're sort of heading that direction, and unless something changes, that's where we're gonna be. I think that the only option will be to have the military activated, to have National Guard units roll in and provide security, because I'm starting to lose. I'm starting to think that things could get to a point where we don't have that. You make judgments in your superior attitude, take away from the opportunity to have a trial without judgment. So I would ask Nick, where did I judge? Like, who did I judge? And I apologize if I have a superior attitude. I know sometimes I can come across as condescending. It's just kind of my personality sometimes, so I apologize if I'm doing that. Ideally, people wouldn't be out with guns, but that's easy for us to say since it's not our livelihood. Now, Doom, I think if there's a convenience store somewhere or some shop and I see some guy at his business and he's got a gun with him to protect himself, protect his property, and he doesn't want he's there to protect his property and he needs to protect himself while he's doing it, or herself while they're doing it, then I don't have an issue with that. What I have an issue with is people who are in these militias, whatever we want to call them, these young men who are getting together and they're going out there to confront people. That's what I have a problem with. Does it upset you when NHL and others send wishes that recent person shot in the name of racism? When we know we had a warrant, he fought with the police, not racism, but probably shouldn't be shot. Yeah, so I don't have a problem with it, because it's like people can say whatever they want, and I would, it doesn't bother me. And I think that if I were a black person, that I would probably have a completely different perspective on this. For me, I don't feel as though that's not something that I'm I'm not in a position to do that, and I don't understand why people fully feel the way they feel a lot of the time because of who I am and the way I've lived my life. But do I have a problem with other people expressing their beliefs, even if sometimes I'm like, well, that's not quite right? That I don't. What I wish is that we lived in a society where there were mechanisms in place where people felt as though, because what this is about is there's just a huge segment of the population who don't feel as though the state represents their interests, who don't trust the police. And there's a lot of good reason for people to not trust the police when you look at American history. And if you're a black person in America and you look at where policing comes from and you look at what policing has done over the throughout American history, there's plenty of reasons to be distrustful. Even police officers, black police officers, are more distrustful of police than white police officers. They're more likely to believe that police officers are racist than white police officers are. It's growing up black in America, you're exposed to a racialized society, and there are some fundamental assumptions that go along with that. And not everybody thinks this way, but a significant portion of the population don't trust the police. And I would say that there's good reason to feel that way, even if some of the incidents that they may be viewing right now are not overtly racialized, but to have that distrust and the visuals and the images, and I think it's a very understandable perspective to have, and I think we should respect their right to voice their opinion, to not play, to take a knee. Those are the types of protests that we want, right? We want people, to express their beliefs, through words, through art, through literature, through music. This is the good stuff, right? That's what makes America evolve and grow. So we close out those opportunities and we make that difficult when we condemn people for doing those things. Then we can't condemn. It kind of takes away when we say, "We'll be a peaceful protest," because that is the peaceful protest. So we have to accept it and respect it, I believe. Open carry is common where I live. It scares me when I go to the grocery store and see people with guns. Yeah, Casey, it's pretty gnarly in America, like how many guns there are. Just because someone has a warrant doesn't mean they should be shot. It's a warrant for arrest, not for death. Absolutely shall be. I hear this a lot. I hear people say, well, he fought with the police. He had a warrant. He had been convicted of sexual assault. He had, not this guy, but I'm saying so it doesn't matter what you've done in the past. You could be a convicted child rapist who just smacked a police officer in the face and stole a bunch of money and took off running down the street with the money. All of those things, those personal characteristics, they don't matter. What matters is does this person represent an existential risk to human life, or are they about to inflict serious physical injury on death on another human being? That's when we use lethal force. It has all of these other things are tangential, sort of, they don't really figure in. Slinging open the door with a handgun and demeaning the officer. So I demeaned the officer. I don't remember demeaning the officer. I apologize if I demeaned the officer, but I don't think I did. When is it time for constitutional militias, foreign and domestic right? I don't think we're anywhere near that right now. I think that we live in a post-industrial society, Doom. So we don't live in the 1700s or the 1800s or even the early 20th century. We live in a highly complex, sophisticated society with contracts and businesses and complex transportation networks and dense populations. And over the course of time, we have developed these formal structures to manage and maintain a monopoly on the use of violence. And if we were to transmit that power just to regular people, and let them do it, they don't have the training, experience, abilities, capacities to do it effectively or fairly. And I think it would be an absolute disaster. But the only thing scares me when people wander into a place and they carry it. Yeah, I don't like it either. But that's not what happened. He was resisted arrest, ignored commands. Shouldn't cops who police black neighborhoods be black? I don't think so. I think that police departments, that it's incumbent upon police officers to be representative of the community. So like if you live in a city that's like 50% black, then seems to me like it would be a good idea to have a police department that's, around 50% black if you can, just so it represents the community because you're part of the community. But in terms of saying we're only going to have black officers in black neighborhoods, we're only going to have white officers in white neighborhoods, I don't think that that's a good way to go. I think that a white police officer can go into a black neighborhood, and if they're an effective communicator and they're a kind person and they interact well with people, they can do that job. And I think the same holds true for a black officer in a white neighborhood. I don't think that. I think if you have a black neighborhood and it's all white police officers, that's problematic. But I think rather than saying for this neighborhood we're going to be all black, all white, you just try to have the department as a whole be as representative as you can. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. And they're like bums. Everyone's got an opinion, right? So aspired change. So I could be wrong, but I see your point. I think representation is important, but I wouldn't want to create an environment where we have a highly racialized situation where we don't allow white officers in certain neighborhoods or don't allow black officers in other neighborhoods. Let's see, how many videos have seen where a driver has pulled a pistol on the glove box and shot a cop? Yeah, there's, I would agree, Mark, that does happen. Most of the ones so those become very popular, those videos. So they're not representative of how often people actually pull guns from glove box. So we become hyper. So it kind of plays a trick on us, Mark, I think, where we think just like with police, people think, oh, the police are out there and they're just shooting everyone. They're just killing people for no reason. That's not the case. Like police shooting people, like when you look at the total number of contacts that police have with Americans on a regular basis, regardless of their race, like them shooting people is very, very rare. But when it happens, it gets a lot of publicity and it creates this idea that it's happening all the time. And I think, Mark, for police officers and for the population as well, we also think that people are always pulling guns and shooting at cops, and it's still a pretty rare incident where someone's going to pull a gun and shoot at you. So I think that we get a disproportionate sort of like fear of that happening, and it can't just be that the person's going into the car so they may have a gun, because I've seen a bunch of other videos, or I know that other people have had people go get guns that way. It has to be, in this particular case, I have there's probable cause. Like I believe this person is going to get a gun. There's something that's telling me that, because people go to the glove box to get other things as well. Anyway, so it depends on the situation. Anyway, a gun scares you. Why is it? Did someone threaten you? Shouldn't let the justice system work with the court system before you make a call of murder? Yes. I don't think I made a call of murder for anybody. And I've said that's like my thing I always say is we need all the evidence to come in here before we do. I didn't think we've seen enough of that video to equivocate the videos with this one. What Tom just said. We're 200 years late for constitutional militias. I agree. I think it's, if we get back to that point, that means that things have sort of crumbled and dissolved. You absolutely did, Nick. I apologize, Nick. I mean, I don't know what I need to do to make it up to you, but I'm sorry I've been a dick, if I've been a dick, which I am quite often. So I apologize. I didn't mean to disparage any police officers. I try to be as understanding as I can. But what I do is when I see people who it doesn't look like they've trained, it doesn't look like they've taken the steps to do their job properly, I'm very critical, because I think that policing is important, and I think it's something that you need to do well if you're going to do it, and you have a responsibility to be trained. So I will be critical of that. If we're burning down our businesses, yeah, it's steroids a larger issue within various police departments. I know that that has been an issue in police departments and fire departments. I think the military's had issues with it as well. And I don't know about specific departments, but I know the department I worked at, we had an issue once where a bunch of guys got tested, and then they put out policies and clamped down on it because, and I don't think it was, people trying to get huge or anything like that. I think it was like older guys taking things off script and stuff like that because they were like losing their libido and stuff. Mostly, I don't know. A constitutional militia wouldn't work anyway. Doesn't matter how many AR fiends and drinking buddies you can rope together. My money is on the 101st Airborne every single time. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like Shelby says, is when constitutional militias were a thing, we didn't have a standing army. We didn't really have. Well, we've had an army for a long time, but like a real like permanent fighting force since the Second World War, really. I mean, when you think about it, we've always demobilized and kept like a really small core. But right now, I mean, like the 101st Airborne Division, yeah, like what's a constitutional, yeah, good point. Let's see, the media surges, loves to show it though. Yeah. Should officers have backed off 25 feet the moment Blake went into the driver's seat? So creating distance from a person that you think has a knife, I think is what Mark's getting at, which is something I'm quite often in favor of. But that all, like I said, that all depends. And I think we've talked about it before, where there could be an instance where you think the person's going to get a knife to harm someone in the vehicle, so if that person's going in there to get a knife, you think they're going to get a knife, then maybe making some distance is okay, and maybe they're just leaving. I don't know, but if you think maybe they're going to harm someone in the vehicle, something like that, it could change it. So again, I would say it really depends on the totality of the circumstances, and it's never like the thing about use of force, deadly force especially, is it's never a X happened, so yes, you shoot the person. It's always like this really messy, weird compilation of facts that come together, and it's always just based on the totality of the circumstances. So I know it's not a fun answer, but everybody have a good evening. Thanks. Hey, we'll see you later. Banana, thank you so much. All right, so we've been doing this for quite a while. I'm gonna do you guys want me to break into a video from somewhere else here? I think that's what I'll do here. Pull something else up. And now this one. And thank you for everyone for doing, I haven't said this. We've been on here. I can't believe we've been doing this for an hour and a half already. You guys, like, the time flies when we do the questions and comments and stuff. I'm going to dye my hair green, this color green, for the Sunday's broadcast. If Sean does the analytics and he determines that we got 100 followers or subscribers. So if you want to see me with this color green hair on Sunday, I'll get my mop and dye it all bright green. My wife is going to do it for me. If you want that, please like, follow, subscribe, whatever platform you're on. Send us the hearts on Periscope. And then, no, we haven't done Waco yet. Hit a subscribe here on if you're on YouTube. The Facebook, we were on there as well. Please follow the Discipline and Punish page. And I appreciate everyone's support. So someone just mentioned Waco, and that is a show I've been wanting to do something on Waco, but and I was thinking I would do it on a Wednesday night, but with what's been happening, I haven't had a chance to sort of dig into that yet, but that's something I'm going to do, Michelle, because I think it's important. And I think that those examples, and like Clive Bundy, I think that's another example that I think is important for us to think about, because it's like sometimes it's the same sort of philosophies and ideas that are being expressed by the other side. So I think like Black Lives Matter people can identify with Waco. And I think people who learn about Waco, it may help them identify with Black Lives Matter protesters, and not completely, but I'm saying that might be one of those little bridges. Yeah, talking about that standoff from years ago. And then Ruby Ridge is another one. And then the the Bundy family ranch, that's another one. There are several of these incidents that are on sort of like what you might say, like more like the conservative folks who dealt with the police. And I think that those cases could be a bridge. So Michelle, thank you for reminding me of it. I have been thinking about it, and I promise that something will be coming on that. Let's see here. Most responsible licensed gun owners carry to protect themselves, and probably you. I think that's true. People, that's what their motivation is. And the problem is a lot of guns get stolen. Was the green hair your MK Ultra handler's idea? Yeah. No, actually it was George Soros. When he sent me my check this month, he sent me some green hair dye and said it would be a good way that no problem, Michelle, to do that. And I'm joking, of course, but if George Soros is listening and he wants to send me money, because I spend like $50 a month on like servers and all for the hosting and all that, and bought a new computer. And if he wants to help pay for that, Mr. Soros, please send your money. I'm more than happy. And the CIA as well. If you guys want to fund me, I'm more than willing if you pay my hosting fees. All right, so this video here is all it says is a robbery suspect gets shot in the back. So this is a shooting in the back. And a robbery suspect is the first thing that comes out to me. So they're looking, looks like they're looking for somebody.
Now, remember this goes down, John. It's got like a 3-foot drop.
You're still waiting for your paycheck? Yeah, let me know if you get yours, Shelby.
Where'd he come from? Came out of this door.
So someone came out of the store, officer opens the door. Whoa!
What the fuck was that?
He said, "Are you okay? Come here. Hurry up.
Are you hit?
Where are you hit?
Fuck, call an ambulance.
Fuck, call an ambulance." So,
Come here. Hold on. Put your gun up. Put your hand. Fucking hell. Check him real quick. See if he's...
okay, so he's shot,
Somebody get a trauma kit.
and now they're going into life-saving mode.
No, nothing on the front. Go check the back.
This is good. They're looking for an entrance or exit. Oh, and then they got the entrance. Center mass.
Fuck. Just calm down. I know. Calm down.
All right. So here's what. Let's play this through one more time. And watch how quickly he shoots, and I'll tell you what I think happened. And I don't know.
This goes down, John.
So they're looking for a robbery suspect. Now, if I'm looking for a robbery suspect and I'm searching and I think we may find him, I'm going to be, assed up. I'm going to be on edge.
It's got like a 3-foot drop. Where'd he come from? Came out of this door.
Don't know if he's in there. Opens the door.
What the fuck was that?
Very quickly, hand comes up and shoots. And then based on... Are you hit? Fuck, call an ambulance. The tone with which he says it, how quickly it happened. He was opening the door with one hand and he had his gun. Like, I don't think he was expecting to find the person. Yeah, the video is not great. I apologize. The quality is not great on this one, Mark. I apologize for that. But I think what happened here was a case of a startled officer. So an officer who they were out looking for a robbery suspect, so you should be scared, you should be worried. And then he opens up the door, not expecting to see him in there. When he sees him, he, oh shit, and he shoots him. And unfortunately, he hit him right center mass in the back. And based on what the officer says and his intonation, his body language, the way he responds, I think this was an accident. I think this was an accidental discharge, some kind of startling type of thing. Which makes me feel absolutely terrible for the guy who got shot, because even if he did a robbery, I mean, if you rob somebody, you need to be arrested and presented before a magistrate, but you shouldn't be shot unless you present you're going to shoot somebody else, and you're going to shoot somebody and you present, or you're going to stab somebody, you're going to hurt somebody, serious physical injury or death. That's the only time somebody should shoot you. So I feel bad, like this shouldn't have happened. I don't think this guy should have got shot. And I feel bad for the officer because I don't think the officer recognized a threat and then responded intentionally with a discharge of his firearm to neutralize that threat. I think the officer just got startled and shot him. He might have had his finger on the trigger. Who knows? But I think this was an accidental discharge, which is brutal. But I don't think that this officer tried to murder somebody. I think this is a mistake. Now, how that's handled, I don't know if it was something reckless. My guess is that this is poor training, that this is poor trigger discipline. People who spend time on the range, a lot of time on the range, they tend not to have accidental discharges because they develop good range safety, they develop good habits. Looks like poor trigger discipline. What Casey said, Casey just hit the nail on the head, is that you don't put your finger on the trigger of a weapon until you've made a conscious decision in your mind that you've recognized a threat, you've identified the target, and you're willing to destroy that target. So that's the only, and your weapon's pointing at it. That's the only time so even you just don't put your finger on the trigger until you've identified a target and you're willing to destroy what's in front of you, whether that be a paper target or a human being or an animal. You don't put your finger on the trigger. And I think this is a case of a person having their finger on a trigger and being startled and having an accidental discharge. And the consequences of that were shooting someone in the back. So I think this is tragic all the way around, but I don't think this is like anything malicious. And this is the kind of things that can happen. And now imagine if police officers do this, if they have a startle reaction and poor trigger discipline and shoot someone. Imagine what a 17-year-old with an AR-15 out on the street does when they're being chased down the road. Are they going to have good trigger discipline? Are they going to be judicious in who they point their weapons at when they're out on the street? How does one properly deal with the pursuit of dangerous individuals in dark, tight spaces? That's really, really tough. Good flashlights. I always found that one of my best weapons and tools for disorienting and gaining a tactical advantage over people at nighttime and police work was the use of light. So using your vehicle spotlight effectively to provide you concealment, because you can't see past that thing. So during traffic stops, it provides you a tactical advantage. When you're entering tight spaces with a modern flashlights, those bad boys are cheap and they're bright. So when I went out on the street when I was working graveyard shift, I had my main flashlight that was like my walking flashlight that I carried around all the time in my left hand, almost all the time when I was out answering calls at night, which provided tons of illumination. And then I had on my belt, I had 2 backup flashlights. In case that flashlight went down, I could put it in my thing and I had a backup. And if that backup went down, I had another backup. So I had 3 flashlights. Then I had a flashlight on my handgun. So I had 4 flashlights just on my body. Then in my vehicle, I had a rifle. And on that rifle, I also had another flashlight. So when I went out on the street, I always had 5, and I usually had another one in my bag. My supply. So I always had 5 or 6 flashlights, and you would be surprised. And some of them had a strobe feature, and they're very bright. That it can make it very difficult for someone to see where you are or react. So going into that space, I would say that the best thing for them to do if it's dark is to pop open that door and let it breathe, and then pie out around it with a bright strobe from a different angle. Something along those lines, of using light and using darkness as an advantage. This is what the military does. The American military, no fighting force in the history of mankind has been better at utilizing darkness as a tool to give them an advantage. I think you mean a fleshlight. No, the fleshlight, Ernesto, is always only for after work. You never bring your fleshlight to work. You get in trouble. There's a whole policy that was written about the flashlight, not bring it to work because this guy, no, I'm just kidding. It's a good one. Any particular flashlight you prefer? Was just looking at them yesterday. So Michelle, that's a good question. Now, if you'd asked me in 2014, I think I would have been like, oh yeah, well you want a Surefire for this and you want this for that. And I was up on all of the gear, but right now I'm totally not up on the gear. If you come back on Sunday and ask Sean, I think he's a little bit of a gearhead. He might be a better person to ask. If anyone else has a good comment, let me know. But I'm not up on all the good gear right now. In police, we used to call people that were up on police work. We used to always call them Tackleberry. You guys ever see Police Academy? There was the guy Tackleberry who had all the guns and all the tools. And on every squad in a police department, you've got your Tackleberry, and it's a guy who shows up and he's got every piece of gear you could possibly imagine. When it came to flashlights, that was me, but not anymore. So, all right, now this one here is going to be a man armed with 2 knives shooting.
42, hold it. 1061.
They're getting, Sean calls it the silly loop where people just keep saying the same things over and over. Put the knives down.
Put your knives down. Hey, I got one like the Negro.
It sounds like this guy might be intoxicated or maybe a mental health issue. And a lot of times when you have people with edge, and you hear the officer say, put the knives down. We don't want to. No, Tackleberry is a character from a movie called Police Academy from like the 70s or like the early 80s, I think. And there's a character, and all he does is collect gear. I gotta let my dogs out of the room. They're begging to go out. There you go. Sorry about that, guys. I had 3 dogs trying to get out of my room here to go to their mom there. So, yeah, so it's a character from a movie called Police Academy. So a lot of times these guys with edged weapons, they have mental health issues. So they keep saying, "Sir, put the knife down. Sir, put the knife down." They have 2 officers with lethal coverage right now. They should be utilizing this time to develop a plan and deploy some type of less lethal munition. So I would recommend that maybe they could get someone with an extended taser cartridge out there, or a stun bag shotgun, which is like a little sock filled with pellets that you shoot from a shotgun, but it's not designed to kill people. It's just designed to hurt really bad. Some type of tool to incapacitate this person and take them into custody. Because when you have an edged weapon and you're within this type of distance, very quickly it can turn from "Sir, drop the knife, sir, drop the knife, sir, drop the knife" to him sprinting at you. So you should be utilizing that time to develop a plan and deploy some type of less lethal if you can do that. Taco Bear was written into the movie because of the Shakespeare's Jew. It could very well be. If it is, then I missed the joke, Shelby. But that you're showing your literary prowess. Look it up and see. You might be right.
One more time. Put your knife down.
Well, if you told him a bunch of times, and he just said, "I'm going to tell you one more time to put your knives down," or what? It's the kind of thing like we need a plan here. Like we need to be trying to engage him on a different level. You've said drop the knife. He's not going to drop the knife. Maybe ask him something. Hey, where are you? Where are you? If the person has a mental health issue, say, "Hey, do you live near here? Do I know? What's your name? What's going on, man? What's got you out here today?" Trying to engage them in different ways and trying to a variety of different techniques to just try whatever you can, but saying the same thing over and over, you get caught in that silly loop like Sean talks about. And I don't see any kind of less lethal plan.
You got 2 knives. Sir, put your knife down.
Okay, yes, 2 knives. That's Citywide. Citywide, you in the air?
Drop the knife, sir. Drop the knife, sir. Drop the knife. Drop the knife.
And I can't see here. I think there's another angle on it, hopefully.
Put the knife down!
And we couldn't see
Shots fired.
what initiated the shooting.
Shots fired.
10-4, shots fired.
Send the ambulance over here. Send the ambulance over here. He got shot.
13 in the northern. 13 in the northern.
Got shot.
We not have shots fired.
All right, now we got a different angle. All right, so this is the guy here. Now there's 3. I think there's 2 or 3 officers over here. I see 2. And then we've got one here. Now this looks like a taser here. No.
Drop the knife.
Drop the knife.
They tried deploying a taser,
Drop the knife.
and I don't see what changed. I don't know if you guys. Tell me if you guys see what changed here, but he seems like he didn't really run at an officer. He shot the taser. He's moving side hopping down the street. I mean, he's dancing around. I don't. And this is one of those cases where I'm going to need to see some other reason for this. Like I didn't see in this video that he was running towards anyone with that knife, or that he presented like an immediate risk to anyone. It looked like he was sort of dancing around and engaged in some kind of performance. But I could be wrong. It could have been that the video angle is such that I'm not seeing something. But when I see this, my initial thoughts are that this is like really problematic. he catches the villain's lackey. Isn't that how it goes? I don't think Shelby the villain ever gets captured. I think the lackey is the one who gets caught up always. Yeah, so I don't really have anything to add to that other than it doesn't look good. The only way that you can justify shooting someone with an edged weapon is if they present like an immediate threat of inflicting serious physical injury or death. It looked like he was moving along the sidewalk like dancing. The officers have like distance. He's not changing the distance. I don't see what changed. I don't see what changed that initiated that shooting. And my guess is that these officers are going to second guess themselves for that one, and they may have been held accountable for that. I don't know what the final disposition was. Looks like death by cop. Yeah, it was definitely death by cop. I don't know if it was like him wanting that, or if he was just off his meds, or maybe he was super drunk. Yeah, it didn't look good, Casey. I'm not crazy about that one at all. That's problematic for sure. And unless I saw some other angle, here, this is the same one here. Hopefully I didn't download it a bunch of times. No, here we go. This one is a carjacking. So it says officer shooting an armed carjacking suspect. Now, when I hear carjacking suspect, I think that means armed robbery of a vehicle, which is you go up to somebody with a gun and you point a gun at them and say, "Get the F out of your car," and you steal a car, which is a very, very serious. That's armed robbery with a deadly weapon. That's very, very dangerous.
Hands up now!
He's giving commands at gunpoint. All right, now there's a foot pursuit of an armed robbery suspect. He's got a gun.
They're southbound. Shots fired.
All right.
Southbound. I got a male wearing a tank top, black tank.
Now I couldn't see what the officer saw there, but if everything's accurate, you have a person who is an armed robbery suspect who carjacks someone with a gun. You think that's who you're dealing with. Then that person runs from you, and the officer said that he has a gun. If he saw a gun in that person's hand, then I don't have a lot of issues with this. I think that if I was chasing someone and I thought they had just done a carjacking and they pull out a gun and they have a gun in their hand, I think that they present an existential threat to the community. They're gonna carjack somebody else. They're gonna shoot me. They're gonna go into somebody's house. They're really dangerous. And if you've gone out and you've carjacked somebody and you're being chased by the police and you have a gun in your hand, you need to lay down on the ground and put your hands out to the side and surrender, because officers shouldn't be required to. You don't have to wait for somebody to shoot you. If you're chasing a person who's armed with a gun and they pull a gun out and they're wanted for a carjacking, it's reasonable, I think. And they're probably going to get in a gunfight with you. That's what I think. Okay, well, this is time for gunfight. He's got that gun. He's going to shoot me. Like, that's what this is. That's just how I feel about it.
He's going to be just south of this. He has a gun. Be careful.
He has a gun. He's slowing things down. I like this. He's slowing things down. Not just running around the corner. He doesn't exactly have good cover.
Federal Grove Alley. He's down. He's shot in the leg. Starting ambulance. Code 10. Had it stand by. This way! This way!
All right.
Two suspects outstanding. They're running southbound through this alley. I lost them.
All right, so this is good. The officer's putting out his location. He's putting out a direction of travel, that they're in the alley. And what they're going to need to do now is all these police officers are going to have to set up a perimeter. So put officers in strategic locations a certain distance away and make sure that these people can't get away. And then you're going to have a police officer who has a dog show up, several officers with rifles, maybe a shotgun. And then you're going to form a team with enough officers to have an unarmed arrest team, and you're going to follow that scent. And you're going to try to locate these guys and take them into custody, and you're going to do it very carefully, very methodically, and it's very dangerous. Minneapolis apparently erupting tonight because of misinformation regarding a suspect who committed suicide. Yeah, I'll check that in a second. Mark. Cops should be expected to put their lives on the line like the military. Yeah, I think that they are expected to put their lives on the line. And I think a certain amount of risk that officers just need to be able to take on. That there is a certain point where, okay, that's enough risk, and I have a right to defend myself. And I think that someone who's done an armed robbery, someone pulls out a gun while you're chasing them down the street, that's you need to, and it's not just a matter of defending yourself as an officer, it's about ending a threat to the community and to the other people that are going to have to take him into custody. Let's see here. Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. I'm really terrified about what's going to happen. Okay, we have a bunch of officers. Nothing worse than, as a police officer, being out on the street and having someone leave their sirens on while you're trying to work. I'll turn that down a little bit.
They went this way. Red shirt. Yeah, this way. I lost them. Red shirt on one of them.
All right, I'm not crazy about this, just sprinting after them. I like the perimeter idea and getting a dog, getting more officers, and being very careful here, because this could be really dangerous. Got a gun on the ground. Looks like a piece of evidence. We'll see right here. We'll see right there. Looks like that gun on the ground is a suspect's gun. Absolutely, Colleen. There's a certain point where you have a right to defend yourself. If the public expects people to just put their lives on the line, at least we can do is require the same of police. Yeah, I agree, Shelby. To a certain amount, you put your life on the line, but at a certain point, and it's when you're faced with that serious physical injury or death, where then it's you have a right to defend your own life or other people's lives. He's in a lot of pain, but and for anyone who says shoot him in the leg, you finally got it where an officer shot somebody in the leg. That's good. You got to make sure you search the guy. If he's shot in the leg too, if you can, I would get a bandage on that, get some kind of like stop the bleeding, because you can bleed out with a gunshot wound to the leg depending on where it is. That's basically it on this one. And when I see that, I don't take issue with it. I don't see anything that causes me pause. There are just some situations that police officers enter where it may be very reasonable for you to use deadly force. All right, the next one here says this is an officer case of excessive force against a woman. We shall see. So he told her to get out of the car. She gets out of the car. She grabs the stuff, slams the door, and grabs her stuff from his hands.
Stop! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground now! Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Put your hands on the ground! Hey! Stop! What are you doing? I'm in a fight.
That doesn't look good. He said, "I'm in a fight," and she said, "You're not in a fight, officer." And I don't think this is a fight. I think what this is, from what I saw anyways, was this officer asked her to get out. She gets out and she like grabs something from his hands. I don't know what she grabbed. It might technically meet the assault statute, which would mean it's aggravated if it's a police officer. So technically might be an assault. I don't know. It depends on the jurisdiction and how the law is written and articulated in that particular jurisdiction. But what it looked like to me was more of a, he was going to put her in handcuffs. If you can't just go grab things from the officer's hand, I mean, I'm pretty sure that probably does meet the definition of an assault. So he was going to arrest her. I have no problem if a police officer pulls somebody over and you're standing there and someone comes over and grabs stuff out of your hands while you're trying to conduct your investigation, and you say, I'm going to put this person in handcuffs while I finish conducting my investigation. To me, that's a very reasonable course of action. I think that he escalates this a little bit, and the threat that this person represents to him is probably pretty insignificant. She didn't hit him. She's not being hyper aggressive other than slamming the door and grabbing her stuff and trying to walk away. I think it was more like an FU than anything from her. And he treats it as like more of a, I'm going to kick your ass. And I don't think she really possesses the capacity to kick this guy's ass. I think he could have just, grabbed her arm, pushed her up against the car, maybe to keep her from moving, and handcuffed her and put her in the back of the patrol car and said, well, you just went from a ticket to a charge. That's how that should have been resolved. At the same time, it's understandable that they get upset when people get out of cars, slam doors, and grab things out of their hands. But the way we respond is important. You can't just slam them on the ground and throw them in handcuffs. And I don't think this is crazy, ridiculous use of force. I think this is just a little over the line and a little bit of an emotional response. It might be a little bit too much. That's my opinion. Oh, now he's telling a war story. So this looks terrible. So this guy, then they got this on video. He's out here, he's telling the war story, and she's like, oh, he grabbed it from my hands, and pushed me. I didn't see her push him. I don't know. It just doesn't look good. It reflects poorly on the agency. A ticket, you could tell by her disposition, it's not her first time she's been in a confrontation. Yeah, so she was totally that was not cool. That's not an appropriate way for an adult to behave. Like, adults, we don't go grab things out of people's hands like that. That's an aggressive, completely inappropriate thing to do. But then you're like, this guy's not a little guy, and he's a police officer. And when you're a police officer, you should be accustomed to people calling you a mother effer and, calling you all kinds of names and being mad at you and screaming at you. And what you do, someone's screaming at you, is you stand there and you let them vent a little bit. You shake your head and say, I understand you're upset, but yelling is just not, when you're done yelling, we can have a conversation about this. So it takes a lot of patience, and that's one of the reasons I left, is because it's a really, really stressful, difficult thing to do. Now they're laughing about it. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, if this is the best war story you've got to tell to the other officers about your crazy fight, then that's pretty weak. This should be the kind of thing you're a little embarrassed about, I think. All right, so this one says this is going to be a crash after a chase in Wisconsin, some type of traffic violation. Illegal for uniformed officers driving unmarked cars, illegal for traffic stops in a lot of states. Yeah, I've seen that there have been rules. In Arizona, it wasn't, because we did some traffic. Me and my partner had this little Honda Civic, and it was like a little racing Honda Civic that had been seized with little light, the lights were on there, they didn't work, and it had all the special fins, and one of those little drifter cars or whatever. And we rolled around it, and we had police lights in it, and sometimes we'd pull people over for our investigations. And it was always fun. I always wanted one of those little balls that you put up on top of the roof, anyway, but never got one. Rule of the streets: if the person has a gun, you don't slap a cop near his gun. Yeah, don't slap cops is a bad idea. They use green Subaru Outbacks. That's awesome. I wouldn't mind having a green Subaru Outback for myself. This is going to be a crash, Wisconsin. Try to stop someone for a traffic violation. And whenever I see chase, my first question is always, what are you chasing them for? It should be serious, because if you're chasing somebody, they could crash into somebody. So you better have a damn good reason for chasing them. If it's an armed robbery suspect or a homicide suspect, a violent fleeing felon, basically, that's it. Unless it's a violent fleeing felon, it's just, nowadays, there's too much liability. It's too much risk for the community. So don't chase them.
Looks like young Lincoln.
And now,
going east on Layton, approaching 70 76th right now.
He's going east on Latham in the approaching 66th in the wrong lane. So they're going eastbound in the westbound lanes. So you're going down the wrong way down a street. It's the middle of the night, so it doesn't look like there's a lot of cars out there. But that's bad news. You better, like, even if it's a violent fleeing felon, you don't want to be chasing people the wrong way down the road. I remember getting in a pursuit with a guy from a shooting and chasing him, and then he got on the I-10 on the freeway and started going the wrong way. I just pulled over to the side of the road. I put it over the radio. I'm like, I just discontinued. He's going the wrong way on the freeway. I'm not going to chase somebody the wrong way. Just because I don't want to kill somebody. Boom. Here we go. And he just T-boned a
Vehicle just made contact with
vehicle
another
out of nowhere.
on 76th and Layton.
Yeah, LA's handling it right, I think, Truth. It's just not worth it. Just like regular people out doing their business. And then like this is a perfect example.
Dispatch, the driver's in custody.
So they skipped forward a little bit and they got the driver in custody. I don't know if anyone was seriously injured in this or not, but if this was just like a traffic violation, we need to think long and hard about our decision-making process. All right, I'm gonna make this the last one, guys, and I'm gonna tip on out, and I'll be back on Sunday with Sean. So just come on 9 o'clock. And again, if you guys, if I get the 100 subscribers and followers across the platforms, then I'll do the broadcast with green hair. So let's see. The last one here is dash cam shows carjacking suspect ramming into a police squad car. So we have a carjacking suspect. All right, so apparently this is the vehicle. See an occupant and a passenger. Let me see your hands. He's showing his hands up, but he's backing up. He puts his hands out the window. Oh, now he's trying to take off. He's not going to be able to fit. Oh! He just rammed the car. I did not mean to do that. I didn't mean to. Leave him alone, she says. So, this is really lucky. So the guy's a carjacking suspect. So he's already, if he's in fact a carjacking suspect, that means that he's committed an armed robbery to steal a vehicle. And now he's trying to flee. You would think maybe he's still, I don't know if he had a gun when he did the first one and he's still armed and now he's ramming patrol cars trying to get away. Is he going to now do another armed robbery and steal a different car so they can get away? Like, this is one of those situations where you're getting close to being like, okay, well, do we need to stop this guy? And then it depends on all the totality of the circumstances, of course, but this is a serious incident, and this guy, I would say, is really lucky to be alive. Let's do it one more time. And he's boxed right in. They go right to the high-risk vehicle stop. And then he starts rolling. That could have been a mistake. But now this is intentional. He's trying to get away, but he can't because there's a vehicle. So he tries to ram through the car. And right here, I could very easily see one of these officers shoot him. So the cops have shot. So that's, again, that would be a great question, Casey. I think you're in the zone here where it depends on the totality of the circumstances. It could be likely that that might be a reasonable course of action. It could also be that they've made a determination that they think it's worth shooting him, but because this officer's angle would have this female as a backdrop and this officer has a female between them, that they can't get off rounds. It could be that this is sort of not quite a carjacking and no one feels as though they're under the threat of sustaining serious physical injury or harm and they've decided not to shoot him. But it's certainly at that point where, man, this could be really bad. And we don't know who that lady is. It could be that lady is a carjacking victim. It could have been this was labeled a carjacking, but it's really some sort of domestic dispute. She could be a kidnapping victim. it could be that maybe I'm just being sexist and we're assuming that this guy in the driver's seat isn't the victim and she doesn't have a gun pointed at him telling him to drive, but that's probably pretty unlikely. I don't know. But that's a good question. And I think, Casey, we're definitely entering into that period, that sort of phase right here where that's a distinct possibility. And if those officers had shot him and they said, look, he was ramming us, he had just pointed a gun at someone and stolen a car, he still had the gun, he was acting crazy, we thought he was going to do another armed robbery, he had shot 3 people. This is where these priors can matter. He has a history of violence. He just got out of DOC for homicide. Says he's not going back. He told his friend he's not going back, and that when we were looking for him, that's what we heard from witnesses. All of these things build up, and based on the totality of the circumstances, it is very possible that could have been one of those situations. So I appreciate everyone coming by today. Thank you so much. If you haven't done it yet, follow, like, or subscribe, and I'll see you guys on Sunday. Thank you so much.